It was 2:49 a.m. when my phone started vibrating on the nightstand. Half asleep, I reached for it, and my fingers blindly fumbling in the dark. But as soon as I saw the caller ID, my breath hitched. It was my wife. My hand trembled. My mind raced. This couldn't be happening. She had been dead for a week. I buried her myself. I saw the coffin lower into the ground. My chest tightened as cold sweat gathered at the nape of my neck. Maybe someone else had her phone? But that didn't make sense. Her phone was in my drawer. I had put it there after the funeral. Slowly, I turned my head toward the dresser. The drawer was still shut. The call ended. I sat there, heart hammering against my ribs, trying to convince myself it was just some sick joke or a glitch. Then I heard it. Drip. A single drop of water echoed from the bathroom. Drip. Drip. But wait, I fixed that tap this morning. There was no way it could be leaking again. My stomach twisted. I turned my head slowly, staring at the darkened bathroom doorway. The silence pressed down on me like a weight. Then my phone rang again. This time it was a FaceTime call. No name, no number, just a blank screen. I hesitated but reached for the phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. But before I could answer, something caught my eye, the framed picture of me and my wife on my bedside table. It was gone. The call ended. A cold, suffocating dread filled the room. Every hair on my body stood on end. I gripped the sheets, my breath shallow, my mind screaming at me to run. But before I could even move, my gaze drifted to the corner of the room. And that's when I saw a shadow at the corner of the room near the bathroom gate. Oh dang, I saw her. A shadowed figure crouched in the darkness, her ethereal shoulders trembling. Her face was buried into the wall, long, damp strands of hair sticking to her ghostly skin. She was weeping. The sound of her muffled weeping crawled and slithered. The sound slithered into my ears, each muffled sob a dagger slicing through the silence. My chest tightened. My breath hitched. My legs? I couldn't move. A paralyzing cold spread from my feet, creeping up my spine like fingers of ice. My muscles locked. My mind screamed, but my body was a prisoner to something greater, something I was seeing but can't believe. This wasn't fear anymore. This was pure, unfiltered dread. And then something changed. The air in the room became thick. The shadows seemed to be deepened, stretching unnaturally across the walls. A strange pressure built in my ears, like I was sinking underwater. The light from my phone screen flickered, casting an erratic glow across the room. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. Then her sobbing stopped. Silence. Absolute and unnatural. My ears rang from the sudden absence of sound. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. The figure in the corner remained still, unmoving, as if frozen in time. But something was wrong. The shadows around her shifted, twisted. They pulsed like something was breathing within them. And then, a soft scraping noise. A slow, deliberate dragging sound, like nails running down the wooden floor. It was coming from behind me. I didn't dare turn around. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to flee, to escape whatever had crept into my room. My body was locked in place, but my mind was spiraling into panic. My vision blurred, spots dancing at the edges of my sight. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The mirror on the dresser. It reflected the corner where she sat. But in the mirror, she wasn't crouched. She wasn't weeping. She was standing. And she was staring right at me. That was it. Final crack in my already fractured sanity. A strangled gasp escaped my lips as I lunged out of bed, stumbling towards the door. My limbs felt heavy, as if something unseen was clawing at me, trying to hold me back. The door! Just reach the door. My fingers grazed the doorknob, slick with sweat. I yanked at it desperately, but it wouldn't budge. The air behind me turned icy. My breath came out in ragged, frantic bursts. Then the lights flickered, and the last thing I heard before everything went black was a whisper, a voice I knew too well, right against my ear. Why did you leave me? I know I shouldn't be writing this. I should be running. But my legs are trembling so badly I can barely stand. My hands are slick with sweat, making the keys slippery as I type. My phone is at 3%, and I need someone, anyone, to read this before it dies. This started 3 days ago. I was coming home from my night shift at the hospital. I'm a nurse. Long hours, little sleep. I've always brushed off the weird stuff, flickering lights, cold spots, probably just my sleep-deprived brain. But that night was different. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw the living room light was on. I was sure I turned it off before leaving. Still, I figured maybe I was wrong. Sleep-deprived mistakes. I walked in, tossed my keys on the counter, and froze. The front door was still locked. I moved through the house, turning on lights, checking every room. Nothing. No one. Just me, out of breath and shaking. I was about to convince myself I'd imagined it when I caught a glimpse of something in the hallway mirror. My reflection blinked too slowly. I stepped closer, and my reflection didn't move right away. I lifted my hand and it lagged behind. Only by a fraction of a second, but enough for me to notice. I waved. It waved. A beat too late. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but when I woke up, there were muddy footprints leading from the front door to my bed. I live alone. I didn't go to work the next day. Instead, I stayed home, triple checking that all the doors and windows were locked. By midnight, I was sitting on the couch with every light on, scrolling through Reddit and pretending I wasn't terrified. That's when I saw it. My bedroom door, barely cracked open, slowly swung shut. I stood. My throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. I tiptoed to the door, hands shaking as I pushed it open. The room was empty. I let out a shaky breath and backed away, then bumped into something solid. I turned around. It was me. I was standing in the hallway, barefoot, wearing the same oversized shirt I was currently wearing, same messy bun, same tired eyes. My chest was rising and falling in time with my own breath. But it was smiling. I wasn't. The copy of me reached forward, placing a cold hand on my wrist. Her grip was almost affectionate. That's when I saw the nails, black with dirt, the same dirt that had tracked across my bedroom floor. She didn't speak, just leaned in close, pressing her lips to my ear, and whispered, "You're in here now." And then she turned and walked away, disappearing into my bedroom. I ran. I didn't grab my phone or my keys. I just sprinted out of the house and didn't stop until I was several blocks away, barefoot and gasping for air. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I went to my friend's apartment and stayed there the next 2 nights, crashing on their couch. I didn't tell them. I didn't sleep. But tonight, I came back. I had to. I needed my phone, my wallet, my car. When I walked inside, the house was dark, quiet. I tiptoed through the rooms, grabbing my things, ready to leave. But as I was about to open the door, I heard footsteps coming from the bedroom. And then I saw her, me. She was standing at the end of the hallway, barefoot and smiling. Only this time, her face was rotting, gray skin peeling in places, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and she was holding my car keys. When I started to back away, she opened her mouth too wide, jaw cracking, skin splitting at the corners, and dropped the keys into her throat. She swallowed them. I ran. I slammed the front door behind me. But when I reached the street and turned back to look at the house, she was already at the window, watching me. Smiling with my face. I'm typing this from the gas station a mile away. My feet are bleeding, my throat is raw, and I'm shaking so hard I can barely hold the phone. I'm afraid to go back, but I think it's too late. Because when I looked into the station's bathroom mirror just now, my reflection didn't blink at all. First off, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who knows of such a building. To be honest, I guess there's a house like that everywhere. In every city, every town, hell, maybe even in every neighborhood. You might know it as well. It's an old house, abandoned for years probably. You've never seen anyone going in there on their own, neither seen anyone coming out of it. If there ever were people who tried to buy it and move in, they'd change their minds about that pretty quickly. The lawn is overgrown. Maybe there's even garbage there. If there's a tree, it's either sick and dying or dead already. From time to time, you can even smell this strange odor wafting through the neighborhood. Well, the one I'm talking about is at the end of the road where I live. It's dilapidated and abandoned, and it kind of looks haunted, to be honest. I've lived here for decades, yet no one ever bought that place. No one ever visited. The only time I can remember anyone even working close to it was when the city deemed its overgrown hedges a potential hazard. They sent someone to trim the outsides of the bushes and cut the branches of the trees growing out over the road. It didn't change much, I guess, since it was still an eyesore, but it definitely was less ugly, at least for a while. When I was a kid, my friends and I would often dare each other to hop over the old, rusted fence and walk around the lawn. It was a dumb game, and I can only remember a single time when one of us even did it. Johnny, a blonde-haired boy who was 2 years younger than the rest of us and wanted to be part of our group so badly, actually jumped over the fence and ran to the front door. He stumbled, fell, scraped his knee, and came running back crying. We laughed, then got concerned when we saw his leg. It looked like he had a rash, and bubbles were forming on his skin along the small cut. Johnny wasn't allowed to play with us anymore from then on, and I guess the others lost interest in the house as well. The next time I saw that kid was months later, out shopping with his mom, and I still remembered how strange it felt that he looked different. Kinda off, sickly. I never saw him again, but back then people tended to come and go from time to time, so it didn't bother me much. We grew up, all of us, and started to stop caring about exploring the neighborhood, but I still remember looking at that damned house that seemed somehow frozen in time. There were storms and flooding, we had neighbors that almost got their roof blown off, yet that one building at the end of the road never even lost as much as a shingle, as far as I can tell. It was eerie, yet no one else seemed to really care about it. The most I got was a polite smile, and that's crazy. I finished school, went to college, then moved back a few years later. You know how life can be. Well, my parents remodeled our house while I was gone, yet this one damn place looked exactly the same when I returned. I can't even tell you how I felt when I saw it again. Somewhere deep down, I had hoped it would have either been bought and rebuilt as well, or that someone had finally torn it down, but that wasn't the case. As I stepped out of my car in my parents' driveway, I immediately spotted it. The rotten shingles, the overgrown lawn, and even the rusted fence looked just like how I remembered. No one had touched it while I was gone, and the trees had regrown their branches, now reaching into the street again. I asked my dad about it, but he only shook his head. "That's just how it is," he said, with a distant look in his eyes. Well, my parents died 4 years ago, which meant that I inherited the house I grew up in. It wasn't unexpected, which doesn't mean I wasn't distraught, though. Cancer is a bitch, and it got both of them. Dad went first. He simply didn't wake up after the last operation, and it broke my mom's will to live. She just fell apart and stopped eating, and not even a month later, I found her dead in her bed in the morning. I hope wherever they are happy now and not in pain. But that's not the reason I'm writing this today. So, while they did leave me the house, they also left me with a ton of headaches. I never realized how much work went into keeping up a whole building. And I don't mean just the taxes, etc. Sometimes it feels like I spend the weekends cleaning just for it to be dirty again by next Friday. Every morning I dread looking in my mailbox, fearing another unpaid bill I had no clue about. And then there's the ant problem. This one I noticed even before my parents had died. It started at the kitchen window, and I don't know how those little monsters got in, but they formed a fucking highway of ants, right to the fridge. I tried everything from poison to cleaning to putting out paper so I could reroute those bastards, but nothing seemed to work. Anything I tried gave me a few hours of peace at most. I've even put tape all over the window frame and have closed it permanently, but they still managed to get in somehow. Those things are big, by the way. Massive, if I think back to how the ants in my childhood looked. Some of them might be from completely different species, while others seem strangely deformed. They almost drove me insane, to be honest. I started hating going into the kitchen at all for fear of seeing them again. But I think I know now where they are coming from, and I shudder to imagine what will happen if I don't do something soon. You see, an hour ago, while drinking a couple of beers, and after I called up one of the few people I've known since childhood still living in this neighborhood, my curiosity got to me. The house at the end of the road came up in the conversation. Of course, my friend hardly acknowledged it, but I got it into my head that I could at least get a reprieve from my own problems if I took a closer look at that eyesore, now as an adult. Armed with my phone, a flashlight, and some liquid courage, I made my way down the road, walking briskly through the night, already feeling the same way I had as a child again. Only this time, I wasn't out after curfew. There was no one who would tell me to stay away, and I could feel in my bones that I would finally find out what was wrong with that place. Well, it didn't take me long to reach the outer perimeter and the rusted fence. Only I didn't hop over it, instead chose to use the gate right in the middle of the lot. If I had thought the fence was a problem, that piece of junk was even worse. It sounded like someone screaming as I opened it up, giving me the first chills of the night. There was a completely overgrown stone path in the middle of the lot, and I kept to it since everything in my mind told me to keep off the lawn. It was moving with the breeze, but not in the same direction. Of course, I took out the flashlight and slowly let the circle of light illuminate my surroundings. From the dead, yet still growing trees to the shrubs and weeds. It looked off, all of it. Like somehow, the shadows were moving even if I kept the torch pointed at a spot. That was the second time I felt chills that night, but I reasoned that I was just imagining it all. The porch and front door were only a couple of steps away, so I forced myself to stop dawdling around and kept going. I remember the sound the wind made when it breezed through the vegetation. The noise of stalks and stems rubbing against each other almost sounded like thousands of small legs crawling over the ground. That memory makes me uneasy. But back then, bolstered by the alcohol, I just shook it off and walked up the 2 steps to the porch. The old, dark wood on the side looked like it would break the moment I put my foot on it, and I think I could see termites disappearing every time the light of my torch passed over them. Not normal ones either. Those things seemed strangely elongated. abnormal. I took a deep breath, shook off those feelings of fear and trepidation, and turned toward the door. Something was in there, I knew. Somehow I could feel it. It had been bugging me for years, and now I finally found myself in front of the door. A breeze blew past me and carried with it an earthy smell and the sound of stalks scraping over each other. Only this time, it really did remind me of insects. Millions of them. Somewhere deep inside, I think I hoped the door would be locked, but as I touched the handle, it swung inward without a problem. The soft sound of tiny insects hitting the floor reached my ears, but I was too transfixed by what I was seeing to notice it at that moment. There was furniture in there, but every piece the light of my torch touched was crawling with insects. A black mass of bodies trying to escape back into the darkness. They were everywhere, on every surface simmering about, and as I looked closer, I could see that most of the furniture had been reduced to a mere facade. All the wood and everything that wasn't plastic had been long since devoured. I could feel a shiver again and wanted to step back, but at that exact moment, something fell from the frame of the door above and dropped down the back of my shirt. With a howl, I shot forward, not thinking about what I was doing. My foot touched the floorboards inside the house, and as if they were made of paper, they broke through at first contact. I screamed in shock and horror as I felt myself falling. The torch tumbled from my grasp and fell down into the basement, while my hands luckily found a strut that just about held my weight. It was aching the moment I swung down, and I could see the light disappear in the darkness, then heard the torch landing with a soft crunch. Beneath me, just a few steps below, I could see it. A dark, moving wave of insects rushing toward the torch I had dropped, ripping at each other to be the first to claim the new prey. It couldn't have been more than a second that I looked down, but I'm sure I could see hundreds of different species in this mass of whirling bodies. Centipedes, ants, termites, and spiders all ripping at each other and swarming over the flashlight. A hiss reached me from down there as the light got dim, then died, but I couldn't concentrate on that. Things above were hardly better. Tiny, chitinous legs touched my fingers, still clinging to the strut. I felt a sharp pain as something bit me, and then more small bodies crawling and racing over my hands. They were biting me, eating me, I realized. In their frenzy, those things wanted to devour me. With another howl, I tried to pull myself up, now almost in complete darkness, and felt more insects dropping from the edge of the hole and down onto my head and shoulders. They were biting into every single uncovered piece of flesh they could find. My ears, neck, and cheeks. Pain was radiating out from every bite throughout my whole body. Those moments are so hazy now. I remember the agony and myself screaming for my life. One of my hands found the frame of the door. I pulled myself up and felt a centipede crawling down my face, then suddenly biting the corner of my lip. I couldn't even wipe it away. All I could think about at that moment was how to get out of there. How to flee and never return. Crying, I pulled myself up, rolled out of the entrance to the house, and heard the sounds of hundreds of bodies bursting beneath me as I fell down the steps to the porch. My hand, already covered in bug bites, touched the grass, and I immediately felt more insects turning, twisting, and clinging to me. Somehow I managed to get up on my feet and ran while ripping my clothes off, whipping myself with my shirt to get rid of those things that were already buried into the skin on my back. Maybe some of my neighbors saw me, running up the road half naked and screaming, but right now, I don't care. The ambulance is on its way since I can't drive right now. My fingers are swollen and moving them is painful, but I need to write this down. There's a rash everywhere on my body, hundreds of bites. I've pulled stingers, mandibles, and tiny insect heads out of my skin, from my back to my forehead. hard to keep a coherent thought right now. Those things are vicious. They are waiting for new victims. If I had dropped down into the basement, I wouldn't have made it out alive again. That much is clear. That place isn't a house. It is a pit. And sooner or later, they might spread. The moment I'm out of the hospital, I will go back there. But not to visit it, no. I will burn it down to the ground. Everything,